I'm not guessing at that. They've told me that, including people on the Intel Committee, including people who run the Intel Committee, the people whose job it is to oversee and keep in line these enormous secretive agencies whose budgets we can't even know. They're black budgets. They're the parents. The agencies are the children. They're afraid of the agencies.
Joe Rogan had Tucker Carlson on his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, and Tucker Carlson dropped absolute bombshells on Joe Rogan, sometimes even leaving Joe Rogan silent, just didn't even know how to answer because of how crazy the stuff that Tucker Carlson was saying on The Joe Rogan Experience. And by crazy, I don't mean insane, like you can't believe that it's happening, that Joe Rogan doesn't believe what's coming out of Tucker Carlson's mouth. Joe Rogan completely believes what's coming out of Tucker Carlson's mouth, and that's why he's silent, because of what he's saying is not just insane, but it's also true, and Joe Rogan knows it. Here's one of the clips, and I'll show you a couple of other ones as well. This tweet is from Erin Elizabeth. It says, Joe Rogan goes quiet as Tucker Carlson drops bone-chilling reality. Members of Congress are terrified of the intel agencies. I'm not guessing, they've told me that, including people who run the Intel Committee. What Tucker says next is truly sickening. So let's check out this clip here from Tucker Carlson over on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Members of Congress are terrified of the intel agencies. I'm not guessing at that. They've told me that, including people on the Intel Committee, including people who run the Intel Committee, the people whose job it is to oversee and keep in line these enormous secretive agencies whose budgets we can't even know. They're black budgets. They're the parents. The agencies are the children. They're afraid of the agencies. That's not compatible with democracy. Democracy is a really simple system, even representative democracy like ours. The people rule. They do so through elections. They express their preference through voting. They send their people to the capital city to run the government on their behalf. Whenever you have unelected people who are not accountable to anyone making the biggest decisions, you don't have a democracy. You have something else, another system. I would call it a tyranny or whatever you want to call it. It's not a democracy. So that's like super obvious. It's playing out in front of everyone and no one cares and no one does anything about it. And
I mean, you have to agree that it's very obvious that they're trying to circumvent democracy and circumvent the systems and checks and balances that we have in place by having people run the country who were never elected to run the country, who were never chosen by the people to run the country. And the way that you do that is not by, blatantly rigging elections or anything like other countries do. You do that by having people who don't need to be elected, like the people who work for the intel agencies, like Tucker Carlson is saying. Now, one thing that I do have a question, and hopefully you guys have a good answer for me that's not a black-pilled answer, because I'm pretty black-pilled in a lot of situations. This is one of them. Tucker Carlson is telling Joe Rogan here, who, by the way, is completely silent, and it's rare for Joe Rogan to be this quiet. What do we do? Tucker Carlson is saying, like, we know, and maybe he's not talking about us. Maybe he's talking about people who are in the government who are elected officials. But what do we do? Like Tucker Carlson's telling Joe Rogan, we all know this is happening, and yet we're doing nothing about it. What can we do? Because if there was something that I could do, then I would do it. But from where I stand, it feels like there is nothing that I can do. All we can do is vote people in. But when the people that we vote in aren't even the ones who are making the ultimate decisions, what do we do at that point to help the situation? I don't know if there is anything. And hopefully you can let me know in the comments if there is anything. I don't know.
And I think the reason is because they're threatened. And if you look at the committee chairmen who allow this shit to happen year after year, they're all, and I don't know, people say, oh, they're compromised or being blackmailed or whatever. I don't have evidence of that, but I know them, and they all have things to hide. I know that for a fact. And so it's not a stretch of imagination to imagine.
If you enjoy content like this, and make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
That, some committee chairman who's allowing warrantless spying on Americans to continue, or whatever abuse they're allowing, knowing fully or hiding the truth about UAPs, ignoring the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Like, why are they doing that? It's not impossible to imagine that some guy with a drinking problem or a weird sex life, and that's very common up there, that's why they're doing it. Because they don't want to be exposed.
That's 100% what it is, and there's a lot of people, there's a lot of whistleblowers who come out. I mean, even on Joe Rogan's own podcast with Bob Lazar and people like that, just him working at Area 51, and who knows if the story is legit or not. Like, I'm not here to debate that. I'm just saying we've heard a ton of people come out and say, like, Bob Lazar was fired because they were tapping his phones and they were spying on him and the conversations he was having with his wife, and his wife was cheating on him, and they didn't want that unstable situation working at a place such as Area 51 or wherever he was, S4 or whatever it was called. So that's why he was fired. You would have to imagine that these intel agencies are also spying on the other government officials, and I'm not saying this is 100% fact, I'm just saying this is in my imagination, okay? All of my imagination, not making any claims, just saying they're probably also spying on these other government officials to under the guise of making sure that their situation isn't unstable, so that people don't have classified information, they don't have access to certain things to call certain shots if they're in an unstable situation, such as the wife cheating on them, or maybe they are alcoholics, or maybe they have certain addictions and things like that. And instead of using that to monitor them and to make sure that the country is running okay and everybody's safe and the people who are calling the shots are in the right state of mind to call the shots, they instead use that as fuel, as ammo to blackmail these people and to get them to call the shots that the intel agencies actually want them to do. We know that that's the case for a lot of whistleblowers who come out, not saying it's 100% fact, but I'm saying that a lot of people have come out and said exactly what Tucker Carlson is insinuating to Joe Rogan right here.
So I don't have evidence of that. I don't have proof of that.
Right.
But that's not a crazy thing to assume that could be happening.
Not at all.
And I said to somebody, a very powerful person, the other day in a conversation in my kitchen, an elected official, holds a really senior position, a very famous person. I was going crazy. I was so mad about all this stuff and about the warrantless spying and about the funding for these insane wars. And I said to the guy who serves in one of the legislative bodies, I got so mad my dogs were afraid. They're like, well, why are you yelling? Because I don't yell at home. But I was like, all these people are controlled. They're all, got weird sex lives and all these things are hiding and they're being blackmailed by the intel agencies. And he said, and I'm quoting, I know. I was like, okay, so at this point we're just sort of admitting that's real? Like, why do we allow that to continue?
The question that I have once again, and I know he's talking to Tucker Carlson is telling Joe Rogan about when he had an elected official who's high ranking in his kitchen. But the question that I have is like, what do you do? Like, what does Tucker Carlson suggest that person who he had in his kitchen do at that point? Like, let's imagine, and this is just a wild guess, I have literally no clue, obviously. Let's imagine that it was Matt Gaetz that was in his kitchen, and we saw the clip of Matt Gaetz being on the House floor or the Senate floor or whatever it was, and surrounded by other Congress people, members of Congress waving Ukraine flags, like, in the same room as him, and he was visibly frustrated. So let's imagine that it was Matt Gaetz, that it was like, what does he expect Matt Gaetz to do? I feel like Matt Gaetz does a lot and he tries, and you could see like when everybody else in that room was waving the Ukraine flags around him, he just had this look of disgust, but also defeat on his face. Like, is there any way that we could even win? Like, is there any way that we could actually turn this around and make people care about the well-being of America again? Or is this thing just over? And to me, man, I'm kind of black-pilled on it. Like, I'm not saying it's over, but I'm saying, like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. I really just don't. And maybe you have an answer for me in the comments, but there's also some other very, very interesting things that Tucker Carlson brought up here to Joe Rogan that I wanted to go over. Let's check out this clip here of Tucker Carlson also telling Joe Rogan, red-pilling Joe Rogan on some other things about DC.
Most of my life in Washington is how close this is to the lawmakers physically. So the U.S. Capitol sits across from something called Union Station, which is a really beautiful train station, right on Capitol Hill. And so to get into the Capitol, when there's a massive homeless city there, people dying of drug ODs right there. And so to get to work every day, lawmakers have to like step over the bodies of fellow Americans dying, living outdoors, shitting in the bushes, addicted to drugs, which is hell, okay? And they have to ignore that on their way to creating utopia in some foreign country. And you're like, does it ever occur to you that that's disgusting? That your primary duty is to the drug addict, your fellow American, you're doing nothing?
What do you guys think is the actual motive behind these people? This is a great point that Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan are talking about here on the Joe Rogan Experience. If you haven't watched the full episode, by the way, highly recommend it. It was a great episode, not even just about like the government stuff, and talking about who really runs the world and everything like that, but also just general conversation with Tucker Carlson. It was great. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think is their actual motivation behind that? Like, what keeps them being able to walk past all these drug addicts, all these people crapping on the ground in DC and all these other cities? It's not just a DC problem. It's a lot of cities that are having that issue. Is it money? Is it truly just a money thing? Like, do these people only care about money? Or is there some other Like, are they truly brainwashed? Are they truly lost and thinking like, oh, this is fine? You know, the border crisis, the homeless crisis, the crime crisis, all this, it's all fine. You know, it's not actually that bad. It's just the right wing propaganda that's trying to tell us it's that bad. Or like what do you think it is? What is it? I can't wrap my head around it either. I'm with Tucker here.
And you're telling me how we're going to make Eastern Europe into, you know, this brave new world? I don't know. I just can't get past that. I think I'm not super sensitive or aware or anything. I'm not super anything, really. I'm pretty ordinary, but I think I would notice. I would. So I was like walking into vote on Ukraine aid. I'd be like, shit, there are like 5 junkies on the street. Like, maybe we should do something for them? No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very bizarre. It's bizarre that they can rationalize it, or at least that they don't get called out by all their people. And this idea that it's compassionate, that you have compassion to leave these people and to give them aid and to help them and give them clean needles.
But then you've got to think, like, maybe there's something bigger going on, actually. Because there's there's an entire sector of the economy now that feeds off of human misery. The drug treatment centers that don't work, the homeless advocates who create more homeless, the, you know, migrant workers, you know, American-born aid agencies, workers who, you know, increase illegal immigration and gang activity. No, this is all-
Not even just that, but also the unhealthiness of America. Obviously, you know, big pharma really capitalizes on that. The fact that our food is full of seed oils and full of just garbage makes everybody fat, out of shape, heart disease, all this other stuff. Then they're not just trying to combat the drug problem that's happening in DC and on the streets of New York and San Francisco and the rest of these cities. They're giving them clean needles. Like Joe Rogan is saying here, they're promoting the horrible lifestyles that are leading to lives of misery and unhealthiness and needing, you know, pushing you towards the need of big pharma. Is that the actual, like, is that the reason why they're okay with it? Because they know that these people are being pushed towards spending more money with medicines and rehab centers and stuff like that? Could that be the case? I can't wrap my head around it for the life of me. Like I said before, make sure you go check out this full episode of the Joe Rogan Experience with Tucker Carlson. It was a great episode. Let me know in the comments what you thought of these couple of clips of Tucker just dropping some huge bombshells, dropping some red pills on Joe Rogan. I thought it was great. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.